Italy, a country full of history, magnificent internationally renowned food, and endless espressos. A country of contradictions, with both bustling cities and quiet seaside and country towns where time seems to stand still. I didn't get to see all of Italy, but I was lucky enough to spend 6 weeks in Milan, Venice, Florence, and Rome. Italy seems like it should be able to be explained in simple terms, due to the well-known stereotypes of the country and its people. But when I had to think about it, I didn't quite feel like I had the words to describe it. There are so many places in the world that can only be experienced rather than talked about or viewed through a computer screen. Not to say this video isn't going to be absolutely fantastic. I think I've managed to convey some of the unique charm and perspective that each of these cities gave me as a solo traveller, and I also hope that you're inspired to travel to these beautiful places that have so much to offer, where people seem to be happy to freely communicate and express themselves to one another. Without further ado, and possibly a few hand gestures, this is my 6 weeks in Italy, from Milan to Venice to Florence to Rome, to my last day in the country being my 21st birthday. I hope you enjoy, and excuse my terrible Italian pronunciation as I try. Grazie per aver I can't do it. Anyway, enjoy.
Don't let the cold air in. You know it's a pretty crier. Even after all we've been through, your girl I still admire.
Welcome to my channel. This is my first time in Italy and I am super excited to be going to Milan. Unfortunately, I arrived really late in the day and I also had 3 trains to catch, so I was exhausted by the time I got there and just went straight to bed after checking into my Airbnb. I didn't particularly have anything planned for in Milan other than visiting the Duomo, which I hope I said correctly. On my first day, I went for a walk just to scout around the city, see what was nearby where I was staying, and I ended up checking out the fancy shopping mall. My Airbnb was nearby the big park in Milan, and honestly, staying near that park was easily one of the best decisions. I stopped at a nearby pizza place called Fra di Volo. Then I went to get some groceries, which were expensive. And my Airbnb host actually made a cake and left me some, which was very nice. And this is Casey. Casey and me were fast friends. I don't know how. I don't have a dog. I would quite like a dog. At any rate, I was Casey's favourite person very quickly, and that was the entirety of my day. I woke up the next morning and went down to a nearby bakery to get some pastries or something similar, and I ended up journaling in the park for a while since it was nearby. It was the weekend and there was some random music festival type thing going on in the background, so the park was actually a bit noisy rather than super calming, but oh well. I got this pistachio brioche, which was absolutely delicious, and I'm really surprised because I did eat a few pastries in France and I honestly think that other than the really expensive ones, this was the best. Then that afternoon I went to the Duomo. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. It was incredible, although I am a bit tired of churches at this stage after having been travelling for just under 2 months now, I believe. I was absolutely in awe, and obviously I got to walk up lots and lots of stairs to go to the roof because that is the best thing to do in Milan, apparently. I'm so used to stairs now. 10 more hours of this and should be there. I was in awe of the architecture, and I understand now why it took them so long to build. I just sat up there for a while looking at the view. It was honestly incredible, and unfortunately it was really crowded, but you wait a while for a good camera shot and then you take advantage of that. Afterwards, I went to the museum, which is just across the road, and they actually had some really cool sculptures in there. On my way back, I stopped for some gelato and then took Casey for another walk in the park, where I saw some policemen on horses, which I just thought was spectacular. And Casey showed back up at my door. Just woke up, and it is 10:30. I decided to try something a bit different on my travels and booked a cooking class online to make pasta and tiramisu with an Italian chef. And although it was a different experience, it wasn't as fun or enjoyable as I thought it was going to be, so I was a little bit disappointed, but at least I ate some yummy pasta and tiramisu. After I finished the cooking class, I headed out for another walk around the city to explore an area I hadn't been before. I found lots of new churches, some beautiful parks, and then afterwards, obviously, I took Casey for another walk because I don't know what else to do with my afternoons. When I was out walking, I found this bakery that had these incredible looking cannoli, and I ended up getting one because it just looked so good, and it is easily one of the best things I have eaten in my life, so absolute win there. And I had some salad for dinner afterwards. The next morning I headed to the train station to go to Lake Como, which is about a 40-minute train ride from Milan. And I met up with a girl from one of the Facebook solo travel groups. Once again, thank you, you are wonderful and life-saving and would totally recommend.
Mine is a bit heavy.
We explored around the lake for a while before stopping for some lunch, which we both got the exact same pizza. And then we walked more and realised that there wasn't much to do in Como other than eat, sleep and go on the lake. And then we got gelato before heading back to Milan. On my last day in Milan, I went for a walk around the city again. I went into a few stores and tried on some clothes, but ultimately didn't find anything I really liked. And then I got some gelato and came across this awesome street dancer who definitely gave a very interesting performance. So this will be the last thing I put in the video, but thank you so much for watching. I arrived really late and had an early night after cooking myself some delicious pasta.
Lay in bed,
On my first day in a new city, my favourite thing to do is to just walk around as much as I can, and other than researching online, make little notes of the things that I see and would like to do.
Skinny dipping and giggling, baby, you got those love eyes.
I window shopped while I was doing this and just enjoyed walking around these incredible main streets and back streets that always seem to be packed with people. Venice is really small, but in reality it feels so large because there are always new places, new back alleys, little streets to explore that I think it would take you a good 6 months to even find every single street in the city. And this is only on the main island as well. My first little stop was at, and I'm so sorry for my pronunciation, Basilica di Sante Giovanni e Polo. As someone who's been all through France and Italy, been to Saint-Chapelle and Paris, and has seen probably well over 100 churches now, to be honest, because I just keep wandering into them when I find them, this one's actually somehow my favourite of the entire trip. I'm not quite sure why, but it seemed to have this incredible grand atmosphere and space to it that the other churches also had, but just didn't seem to bring to life as much. On my wanderings through the city, I came across this little library, which I later looked up the name for, and I think it's pronounced Acqua Alta, which was tiny, but had old gondola boats for shelves, some of the coolest little souvenirs ever, and an area outside where there were steps made from books, which honestly mostly upset me but was also kind of cool, that led right up to one of the canals. Afterwards, I stopped for some gelato. I came across the Rialto Bridge, which is incredibly stunning, and I got this shop, which makes me incredibly happy because of how symmetrical it is and the tangible energy between the gondola guides who, wherever you were in the city, always seemed to be talking to each other and saying hello and asking each other how they were doing.
Well, I washed my hair, and this is what happens when I wash my hair. It goes boof. Big boof. Professional blowout, you know. Can't even know what this looks like. It's so puffy!
The next morning I booked a gondola ride and it was super crowded because there was actually a marathon on while I was there, which was pretty cool even though it made the city completely packed. I only went for a gondola ride in Venice because I know it's the thing to do, and I felt I would be a little disappointed because I do lots of whitewater kayaking at home and I knew it probably wouldn't exceed my expectations in any way, shape or form, so I booked the cheapest one I could find, which was €35 to go in a boat with a few other people. The maximum they can charge you for a boat to yourself is €80, so I was pretty happy to save a bit of money.
deve fare il nonnello cavalca degli anni.
After that, I went to another incredible church, which was also pretty cool, and I cannot remember the name of it, and I could not find it on Google Maps, so feel free to search for it when you're in Venice. I found Canova's tomb as well, which was in the church. Actually, that should make it really easy for me to find it. Canova has the coolest tomb I've ever seen, and I've decided I would like one just like it. Next up, I headed to the Biennale, which is an art festival in Venice held every 2 years, representing artists from all across the world, so modern art. I personally have really mixed feelings on modern art. I enjoy a realistic style of painting more than anything else, where the painting seems to be so tangible or realistic that it could leap out at you and be a physical object. And I also love a lot of landscapes. My issue with modern art is that a lot of it seems to be about what it represents rather than what it actually is and the way in which it's interpreted, whereas to me it seems like a lot of the more traditional paintings are very representative of what they are and leave less room for interpretation, and the cohesion as a whole is somehow greater. So upon saying this, some of the exhibitions at Biennale didn't really strike my personal fancy, but there were some really cool ones in there which really surprised me and I enjoyed looking at, especially with such a wide variety of ideas represented and so many different methodologies of creation used. So regardless of your personal thoughts or feelings, I think it's incredibly worthwhile to check out. By far my favourite exhibition, and unfortunately I can't actually remember what country it was this one called The Shape of Water or something similar, because it gave me a chance to play around in front of a projector and create something that felt like it could be in a music video and you'd have to pay lots of money to actually do, and you could just wander in and do it, which made me very happy. a lot more to see in Venice than most people think, because Venice is actually 117 small islands, not just one big one. I really wanted to take the opportunity to explore a bit more of Venice, so I headed to the outer islands of Burrano, Murano and Torcello. I paid €25 for a boat trip to take me to all 3 islands for the day, which I was pretty happy with. We started at the island of Murano after roughly a 35-minute boat ride from Venice. Murano is known for its glass blowing, so we started with a nice little demonstration. And the glass, I don't even know what happened to that vase, but I just love how he ignored it. I really liked Murano. There were lots of little small streets to just wander around, and I picked up a little essi biscuit, which is the specialty of Burrano and Murano.
I'm scared of the things that aren't even there. But in a gym.
It was only a short boat ride to Burrano, and we passed an entire old abandoned island which only took a couple of minutes to see the entirety of, which to me was mind-blowing. When we arrived at Murano, I was completely in love. The entire place looks like something out of a Wes Anderson film.
Not looking for company.
From Burrano, I crossed over to another island via a bridge which is called Mezzorbo. Mezzorbo? I cannot pronounce that. And the houses here were a lot more run down, but they actually had an incredible feel and atmosphere to them as well.
This place is so cool. Like ridiculously awesome. Like straight out of a Wes Anderson movie, so I'm convinced that this is where Wes Anderson got his inspiration. And B, why aren't all houses painted in cool colours? It would make the world so much more interesting.
Sucking on lemons, bloodwoods and breeze. You're killing me slowly. You do it with ease. Weeping with will.
Our final stop was Torcello, where there was only really a couple of houses and just a giant old church.
You say you don't need me.
I paid €5 to go up the bell tower, which I wasn't that stoked about, but the views up there were pretty incredible. From Torcello we had roughly a 55-minute boat ride back to the main island, and I honestly had such a great time. I just sat there, listened to music, watched people on their boat, and we arrived back at the Grand Canal just in time for the sunset. streets.
Going to a church to get some pizza, maybe gelato, we'll see.
The next day, I just wanted to wander around the streets of Venice and visit some places I hadn't been to yet, as I had made it around most of the main island, but not the southernmost end. I got some gelato. I saw these performers on the street, which was incredible. For me, Venice is a city filled with magic and wonder, and I feel like a lot of people don't look too far past the Grand Canal and the Rialto Bridge, but there's a lot more to the city, especially if you are able to go explore the outer islands. It has so much charm, and it's such an incredibly unique city that it is absolutely worthwhile visiting because there's nowhere else in the world like it. I would definitely recommend going to the outer islands for a day, as it offers a big change, and as each island has its own environment and atmosphere that completely differs from the main island, so it's definitely worthwhile to check out, and it's not too expensive either. I also wanted to include some of my film photos that I took when I was exploring Venice, as it's such a perfect place to take film photos. Unfortunately, when I was amidst all the colourful houses, I had a black and white roll in my camera and I didn't bring a spare colour one, so unfortunately all my photos from there in film are going to be in black and white, but I do think that also really complements the atmosphere of the space. I'm really happy with how these turned out, and I hope you enjoy them as well.
I love you with all my heart, with all I can. I love you with all my soul, with all I am. I love you with my mind, with my overthinking mind. I love you. I love you. You are my favorite view. You are my favorite sound. You are my favorite touch. You are my everything. You are my favorite view. You are my favorite sound. You are my favorite touch. You are my everything.
Till I start to cry, I'm the one you always.
Rather than trying to work out what to say about Florence, I think a better question is, what isn't there to say about Florence? It is everything that a late teen, early teenager student could dream for, and it is simply incredible in every single way. I didn't know anything about Florence before I arrived, except it was the hub of all art during the Renaissance and still is today. I was amazed continually by Florence, and I'm absolutely in love with the place. So without further ado, here is my first few days in Florence. I was continually surprised by how many people were out and about. Florence is a very lively city, and I definitely wasn't expecting that. In the afternoon, I decided to attend a pizza and gelato making class. Originally, I was a bit skeptical about doing this because I did a cooking class in Milan that I didn't enjoy that much, but this one was absolutely spectacular.
You can also sing a song to it if you want to bond in the meantime.
I met 4 other female solo travellers, which was awesome, and I had lots of fun with them. And our chefs had a great sense of humour, which definitely made the whole experience more enjoyable.
Okay, you ready? Count down. 3, 2, 1, go!
The pizza I made was easily the best pizza I have eaten on the whole trip, and I've decided no other pizza will compare in my life. And unfortunately I didn't get any videos of the gelato, but it was absolutely delicious. We got to try lots of different flavours that everyone had made. The next morning I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I got some breakfast and then headed out to Pisa, which is about 45 minutes away from Florence by train. To be honest, Pisa has a nice atmosphere to it, and I love, once again, the reflection on the canal, but Pisa didn't seem to have that much that would interest me personally. The Leaning Tower was definitely cool, but it was a lot smaller than I thought and not on quite as much of a lean either, and it was way too crowded for me because I hate being surrounded by people, so... I decided to head down to Livorno afterwards to get some lunch, and it's about a 15-minute train ride. I had quite a walk to get down towards the terrace and beach area, but it was absolutely lovely to see the sea, and it was a gorgeous day. I spent a really long time trying to find somewhere to get lunch, but because it was a Sunday, all the places were closed or had giant queues or were booked out. So I ended up quite hungry, and I did manage to get some gelato, but that was about all. And I was super hot, super hungry and super tired, so I came and got a pizza when I got back. The next morning I went on a little bit of a foodie tour. I stopped at Shake Cafe for a while, went to Pino's Sandwiches, and then to La Caja for some gelato. I did a bit of thrifting and picked up a book and just enjoyed the absolute beauty of Florence. In the evening, me and one of the girls I met at the cooking class decided to head up to Piazze Michelangelo to have some wine and watch the sunset. It was All Saints, so it was super busy, but we watched the sunset and it was incredible. And this couple just got engaged as well, and everyone had a very loud cheer for them, which was quite cool. I honestly don't have words to describe how beautiful the sunset is up at Piazze Michelangelo, other than to say that it's a must-do thing when you're in Florence. The city skyline is incredible and there's nothing like it. decided to finally try the famous all'antico vineo, which I've mispronounced, and I went to the one at San Marco because there's never a queue there. And I went to the one at San Marco because there's never a queue there, whereas the two on Deneri have queues an hour to 2 hours long. I then got some gelato from Vinci, which I thought was a tourist trap but was told wasn't, and it was good but not my favourite. I then went out for dinner at Zaza's with a girl I met on one of the Facebook travel groups, and we had a delicious meal. The potato gnocchi was absolutely insane. I then headed to the Uffizi Gallery, which was incredible. There was some beautiful work there and some pieces I was really excited to see. I had a combined ticket for the Uffizi, Boboli Gardens and Palazzo Pitti, and I'm so sorry I've mispronounced all of those.
My spot now. I'm hungry.
I picked up a cannoli from Gino's bakery, which I ate when I got to the gardens because it had been recommended to me, and it was absolutely delicious. I absolutely love gardens, and they really bring me back to the beauty of nature, which after travelling for a while and being in big cities can be hard to come across. Further so, finding places in nature where you can be by yourself rather than still coming across people. It took me a while to explore everything, around 2.5 hours or so.
Making me feel like I'm grasping for air. You say you don't need me. Not looking for company. Botanical baby, my botanical baby, my botanical. All you put me through. Why do I want you? Botanical baby, my botanical baby, my botanical. All you put me through. Why do I need you?
I was pretty tired by the time I finished, so I got some gelato from Sabrino's, and I picked slightly more simple flavours than I usually would, including a spiced milk one, which was like a weak chai latte in ice cream form. That kind of sounds gross, but it was absolutely delicious. I then went to I Fratellini, which is the oldest panini place in Florence.
Weeping with willows, snakes in vines. I wish I could leave you.
let me say that in the 2 months leading up to me arriving in Florence, every single person I know who had been there had talked so highly of the David and said it was the best thing they had ever seen in their life. No amount of video footage I have is going to be able to contain or truly show the magnificence of this sculpture, and it is something you need to see yourself to be able to comprehend how magnificent it is. But I will try and translate it for you the best I can. I got there really early, as in the second time slot, which is 9:15 AM, and there were way less people. It filled up really quickly though, so I would definitely recommend going to see it in the morning.
Can't focus on driving down these country.
I then headed to go get some gelato, and shortly after to Rooster Cafe to get some pancakes. The place was very Americanized, but I really enjoyed it as I was wanting something a little similar to what I have at home. The next morning I made another stop in at my favourite place in the world, Shake Cafe, and journaled there for a few hours before heading to Palazzo Pitti. Other than there being lots of art, the building itself was absolutely incredible. There wasn't just paintings, there was art on every single ceiling. It was incredible, and the place itself was art, and something that is easy to look past due to its unassuming exterior.
Here I am, picturing you waiting on my doorstep. The castle in the rearview mirror, singing our favorite songs. Mom's waiting, so we can't be too long. I'm not in love yet, but maybe one day I'll be married and have a daughter who reminds me that we grow old, and I'll name her in your memory. You'll never be forgotten. Her eyes an ocean of hazel and green, and they say she's got bright eyes like marigolds.
After getting some gelato, I headed up to Piazze Michelangelo for the afternoon to attempt some drawing. I had no clue how it was going to go because I honestly haven't done a lot of drawing in the past few years, but occasionally I feel inspired to. I did a little bit of a startup sketch of the city, which I still have not finished. But I figured that while I was in Florence, I needed to try and at least make a little bit of art.
Come up for later at night, you know we'll be alright. I'll stay here by your side, can call me anytime. Those days where you feel blue, you know I got you. Those moments how fast too, you know that I'll come through. You know that I'll be there by your side. Those days where you don't feel alright, 'cause I'm counting on you, baby. I do. We think that they can be together. You know that I am yours forever.
I went back to Antico Venice after walking past the giant crowds on Deneri. I obviously went to the one in San Marco and waited about 5 minutes.
We'll skate around in the dark. We could say hi to the moon and then walk home to this group. Come up for later at night. You know we'll be alright. I'll stay here by your side. Can call me anytime. Those days where you feel blue, you know I got you. Those moments how fast too, you know that I'll come through. stacks. I am better off, baby, run this shit. Fuck.
I was like, this is so smart. And so that's what I've been doing.
And I'd give up forever to touch you, 'cause I know that you'd feel me somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be. I just don't wanna go home right now.
And the background's overexposed.
And all I can taste is this moment. And all I can breathe is your life. 'Cause sooner or later it's over. I just don't wanna miss you tonight. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand.
L'amore c'est tout.
When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am.
How do I
And you can't fight the tears that ain't coming, or the moment of truth in your life, when everything feels
Oh, I love that. No, that looks.
yeah, you please just to know you're alive. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am.
Is wigs. I like that.
And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am.
Well, if you wanna go out for a night, it'll be okay. The sun is going down and it's getting late. But baby, summertime's around the corner. And maybe this time I'll get to know you. keep our cool, it'll be alright. 'Cause baby, summertime's around the corner. And maybe this time I'll get to know you. Yeah, baby, summertime's around the corner. Oh no. And maybe this time I'll get to know you. Cause baby, summertime's around the corner. And maybe this time I'll get to know you. Oh baby, summertime's around the corner. Oh no. And maybe this time I'll get to know you.
And I really didn't know what to expect, especially after I had such a fantastic time in Florence. I really didn't think that anything could compare. However, Rome definitely had some highlights, and I'm excited to share them with you today. I got into Rome really late in the evening and didn't have time to do anything much other than explore a couple of churches near my hostel, as I needed a bit of a walk after I spent a long time in the train. I've seen a lot of churches on this trip and they're still nice to explore, but the real winner of the evening was the sunset. It was absolutely gorgeous and I got a little glimpse into the evening life in Rome, so I was very happy. The next morning I woke up reasonably early and I went to go and get a lovely croissant and a coffee near my hostel. I didn't have anything planned for Rome other than having booked some of the classic tourist attractions like the Colosseum and the Sistine Chapel, but I didn't go to those until a lot later on in my stay. So on this first day I just decided to go walking, and the first place I came across was this gigantic park that wasn't too far from my hostel. Easily my favourite place in Rome to this day, and I feel really lucky to have been staying not too far from it. I know you could say like literally, but metaphorically and like spiritually, this place just like felt like a breath of fresh air. Like, oh my god. I spent a while wandering around and then a little bit of time journaling by the lake, and it was just a magical experience. Everything felt perfect. I honestly can't even describe that morning. It was just wonderful.
You said, please don't be so lame. And I said I would be.
From the park, I made my way down from the quiet and solitude into the busy, bustling atmosphere of central Rome, searching for some lunch with an annoying hole in my stomach. After wandering around for a little bit, I stumbled across a little place called Il Restaurant, where I got some delicious pasta. I was only there just after it opened, so it was super quiet, but the bread was fantastic, my pasta was delicious, and it was a pretty reasonable price, and I did go back more than once. I didn't realise how small Rome was, and that it's actually pretty easy to get through Rome quite quickly, so from lunch I made my way to the Spanish Steps, which I honestly don't understand why they're so famous, because they're just steps on which the architects did a bad job, but the view from the top is pretty fantastic. Most tourist spots also happen to be great places for people watching, which is an activity I really enjoy. I stopped at a few churches on my way through the city, which genuinely seemed to be on every second street, if not every street. I made my way across the river towards San Antonio and just continually kept finding little spaces. I even walked all the way to the Vatican but didn't go into the Basilica as I felt like the line was way too long.
And they were the ugliest fucking shows I've ever seen in my entire life. And you can do no wrong.
I got some afternoon gelato, which was nowhere near as good as the ones in Florence, and then I also stopped and had a little cheesecake at a French place, which was way too overpriced, and I'm now annoyed I got. By the time I was heading back, it was starting to get dark, and I just kept stumbling into random shops as I made my way back across the city to my hostel. The sun had started to go down and there were still lots of people on the streets, and it was really cool to feel the atmosphere and energy of the place. Everything felt very interconnected despite the different groups of people obviously belonging to themselves. On my way back, I also visited the Pantheon, which was a bit less crowded than usual because it was obviously dark and apparently you're meant to go during the day. But I was just marvelling at the architecture and incredible building structure, and I really don't comprehend when I go to these places how we seem to have gone backwards in architectural and building abilities. And not too far from the Pantheon is the Trevi Fountain. Now, everyone told me before I got there that it was crowded, but I did not understand how crowded it really is. It's actually horrible, to be honest. I do think the fountain's lovely, it's beautiful, but it's so difficult to get a photo of yourself. I may be smiling in this video, but I'm really not happy. And I basically ran away as soon as I could, and you're also not allowed to eat gelato by the fountain, because a policewoman told me that, and I don't like that. That's just lame. Trevi Fountain, meh. The next day I set out to wander around the streets again because lo and behold, what else is there to do?
I'm so stoked.
I did a bit of shopping at some of the thrift stores and then got some pizza.
So kiss me and smile. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go.
I also got some gelato from a fantastic place, which was my favourite place in Rome.
On a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again. Baby, I hate to go. Now the time is gone.
I then went to La Fatrini and accidentally had an accident with some of the books at the bookstore. Yeah. I decided to go to the Basilica in the Vatican, which despite its grand size didn't feel too different to any of the other churches except for the fact that it was just bigger and better in every kind of way. I feel like it's the Kardashians, for some reason, is the best modern example I could give. There was, however, a sculpture of death in the church that I really, really loved.
And then I just spent a while staring at the guards on my way out because I'm trying to work out what they think about all day, particularly in those outfits. Not to say that they're not cool, but just the dude looked very angry and I was trying to work out why. So he's probably sick of people taking photos of him. If you've made it all the way to the end here, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next Rome video because there are way more to come. And it turned out to be pretty good, and the cappuccino was really pretty. I then made my way past the Spanish Steps, one of my favourite tourist watching spots. I stopped in at Sephora because they were having a really good sale and brought my first perfume ever, which I'm pretty excited about, before heading back to Eddy Restaurant, where I had some delicious pasta for lunch. I then made my way through the city towards Travestere, as I hadn't been there before and had heard the area was pretty cool and a little on the trendy side.
A month or a year from now, I'll find my way somehow back to myself again.
There was lots of street art, old narrow streets, and interesting buildings. It was definitely an interesting place to walk around, and at the edge of the suburb there is a gigantic hill which for some reason I decided to walk up because I thought there might be a view. I saw a couple taking some photos, and that just made me a little bit happy because I always love running into random little photo shoots or things happening around the cities that aren't directly going for Instagram. I did enjoy the hike, and the views at the end were absolutely incredible. It wasn't even that late in the day, but the sky had this incredible glow to it, and there were seagulls everywhere, which usually I would hate, but for some reason it made it better, and I'm not quite sure how or why. It was nice to get away from the touristy areas and a little bit off the beaten track. On my way back, I tried to find a new pair of Doc Martens because mine are absolutely trashed after all the walking I've been doing through all of Europe. And then I stopped in at my favourite gelato place to get some gelato before deciding to get some dinner in Travestere. I'd heard that most of the restaurants were pretty good. Honestly, I just picked one that I thought looked quite pretty. It's not the best place I've ever eaten in Rome, but the gnocchi I had was a very generous portion and I really enjoyed it. As I was walking back to my hostel, it was dark, and suddenly, just as I walked across the bridge, there were birds everywhere. I later had to look up what this was called, and technically when birds clump together like this, it's called a murmation, so I like to say that there were murmations of birds everywhere. It went on for honestly about 20 minutes, and I just sat and watched the birds. It was a magical experience, and I'm just going to stop talking now to let you appreciate how spectacular this event was. Shop and also found a three-legged cat that I cried about a lot later on and really hope wasn't a stray. The next morning I headed back to my favourite big old park and decided to spend a little bit of time just walking around, sitting and admiring the landscape. There were a few people around, but the park's also gigantic, so it was pretty quiet. I then saw a lady walking her cat, which really threw me off because I've never seen that before and honestly I've never thought of it. From Villa Borghese, I made my way down to go get some lunch, and I was really craving pizza because I hadn't had any for a while, and I ended up at this place with really good reviews, and let me tell you, this is the biggest pizza I've ever eaten, and I did eat the whole thing. From there, I walked just up the road to one of the local flea markets, and I did have to pay $1.60 just to go in, which I thought was a little bit annoying, but it was pretty cool to see what everyone was selling there. The prices did vary a lot, and some of them were more reasonable than others, but it was definitely interesting to check out. I did manage to talk this lady down on this cardigan embroidered style thing that I really liked. I was a bit tired and I stopped in to get a coffee, orange juice and do some journaling at Tree Cafe before heading back to my hostel. The next morning I made it back to Gino Bar and had a delicious brioche and cappuccino as per usual, before it was time to head to the Colosseum. I'd booked it a few days earlier and I think I got there before too many of the big crowds as it was quite early in the morning. And honestly, the Colosseum was spectacular. The number of people who are coming through does dampen the atmosphere a little bit, I'm not going to lie, but if you can concentrate on what's in front of you and not worry about the people, you'll probably be fine. I spent most of my time there imagining an actual gladiator fight going on in the ring, which I thought was quite fun. And I also didn't realise how, and honestly I just think it's an absolute marvel of engineering and human achievement, although obviously what went on there was not the greatest when we look back at it. The building itself is absolutely phenomenal. After I'd spent some time at the Colosseum, I made my way back over to Travestere and had some lunch at Torcello, a place I'd been recommended by someone in my hostel. The pasta was really good and I had my first panna cotta ever and it was absolutely delicious. I was still hungry, so then I got some ice cream and I desperately tried to find somewhere to sit while it melted. I made my way through a new section of the city I hadn't been to before, walked up a load of steps and then went to Piazza Venezia, aka the Typewriter as it's known by the locals, which I think is a pretty cool name if I'm being honest. It was a nice place to just observe and watch the world go by. Got back to my hostel and made a smoothie before finishing for the day. And as you may have come across before, here are some of my 35mm film photos. Hope you enjoy and I'll see you in the next episode. ever. Cheap, delicious, satisfying, and they now know my order. After I had some fuel in the tank, it was time to head to the Roman Forum. If you haven't heard of it before, it used to be the centre of day-to-day life in Rome. It's basically where every single important thing in history in Rome happened, for lack of a better description. It's been called the most celebrated meeting place in the world and all history, which means it's now a sprawling ruin of architectural fragments and archaeological excavations. I think the main thing that struck me walking around the Roman Forum is that I was walking in the steps of so many men who would have been considered incredibly important in their lives, not just by themselves but by others as well, and now most of them we don't even know their names. I think it's a fantastic place to realise the necessity of letting go of one's ego. I went thrifting at Humana Vintage and unfortunately I didn't find anything that suited me, but I did then go to Eddie Restaurants to get some delicious artichokes and pasta for lunch. I had never had artichokes before and now I'm genuinely addicted to them. I think they're the best food ever. Plus, aubergine is literally the best thing in the world. I walked past some mildly famous monuments on my walk to go and get some tiramisu. All their tiramisus have the same base but with different toppings, so it's not actually as varying as it sounds like it is, but it was delicious. I then decided to explore a bit further and ended up buying a book from Otherwise, which is an independent bookstore. I wrapped up the day early as I was starting to feel a bit tired, and I made myself some pizza for dinner from scratch, which was pretty delicious. The next morning I was obviously back at Gino Bar and I tried a new brioche and a little thing, both of which were good but not spectacular, before heading to the Vatican. I wasn't too sure what to expect and I didn't really know about much other than the Sistine Chapel, but I will say that the layout in the gardens is absolutely gorgeous and there are a lot of architectural and sculptural marvels. More than anything, I like to observe people walking around these places because there's such a wide variety of people who visit them, from people who are locals or regulars, through to tourists, through to people who have wanted to visit for years. Everyone has a different reaction and it's interesting to see what people are feeling and observing as they travel through. A lot of the sculptures were gorgeous, but they don't compare to the David in Florence. Unfortunately, I don't think very many things can. Hashtag Florence. You're not allowed to take photos in the Sistine Chapel, but hey, you can take a video, I suppose. The interior of the Vatican is absolutely gorgeous. There are so many incredible paintings, ceilings, mosaics, tapestries, although the tapestries do smell musty, I'm not going to lie. And there just seems to be so much incredible art and history there.
Don't break my heart, 'cause you want to. Break my heart, 'cause you have to. A heart is a thing you hold on to.
to lie, the Vatican did make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I am glad I went and experienced what it's like. I was also particularly excited to see a piece by Salvador Dali just because
Never wait, they're still true. And those late nights, I've been wondering if maybe you felt them too. So don't go, break my heart. You don't have to. Oh, you don't have to. But
when I finished at the Vatican, I was a bit hungry, so I went and got some gelato from my favourite place ever. It was delicious, as per usual.
and it's what I want to.
I then wandered through the city a bit before grabbing some tiramisu because I was a little bit hungry again, and it was delicious. I do think it was better than Mr. 100. The day seemed to pass really quickly, and before I knew it, it was evening and I was cooking myself some dinner at my hostel. If you've been here before, you'll know I always share my 35mm film photos at the end, so I hope you enjoy.
Don't break my heart, 'cause you have to. A heart is a thing you hold on to. Don't break my heart. Don't break my heart.
Thank you so
Happy birthday to you.
Hi, my name is Eowyn, and I spent my 21st birthday alone on the other side of the world, far away from my friends and family. You might think that sounds crazy, and honestly, it is. But sometimes it feels like the world is spinning so fast, and the only way to slow it down is to sit by yourself and reflect on everything that's passed. I'm young, that's what everyone tells me, but I still feel like I'm losing time. I have no idea where I'm going, but I am good at goal setting, so I suppose that counts for something. I hope this video helps you in some way, shape or form. I've tried filming this video a lot of times, so to me that says at 21 you're still pretty confused about a lot of things. At least I am. I think it's difficult to sum up the aging process and how you feel each time you add another number to your age. I think I felt behind for a very long time, the way I know a lot of people in today's society do. But now I feel like I'm not quite where I'd like to be, but closer to myself than I ever have been before. I'm currently in Rome, if you couldn't tell by any background noise that may have made its way into this video. I've spent the last 3 months or so in France and Italy, my first time in Europe, and was very mind-opening for someone from New Zealand all the way down the bottom of the world, away from everyone else, and therefore I realised that in New Zealand we do have a very heightened sense of self-importance because the rest of the world simply doesn't exist to us because we're so far away from it. Obviously that isn't true or realistic, and society still has the same influences on us growing up as everywhere else in the world, even if we're not in America. Most vital lesson I've learned this year is the reality of how completely unimportant I am. And I know that I just talked about that sense of self-importance,
and it's easy to fall into certain patterns, to think a certain way when you stay in the same place for long enough because the world is small to you. But when I started travelling, I realised that most people don't even speak my language. Most people never even think in the same way that I do because they're made of... I just didn't realise how many people there were in the world and how separate lives are and how quickly they can touch and then completely be forgotten. All these connections are randomly happening all over the world, whether they're short, long. I've been lucky to meet incredible people from all over the world while I've been here, and I feel really lucky. As well, the world population just hit 8 billion a day or two ago. And to me that's an insane number, and I don't think I can fathom how many minds that is and how many perspectives. What's there to say about 21? For America it's a big deal because it's a legal age, but where I'm from and for other parts of the world it means nothing. It's just an over-highlighted number in the passing of time. Whenever I talk to people about, oh, I'm celebrating my 21st in Rome, everyone's like, wow, that's so cool, super exciting. And a few days ago I was about to go to sleep and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be for my 21st in Rome, I can do all these great things. And then the realization that I would be doing them all by myself hit me. And when I was 15, on my 15th birthday, I ate my lunch alone at high school, and I promised myself that it would never happen again. And I realised that it, in a way, has, or actually has in reality. And I ended up crying a lot because the strength of that impression, crying on my birthday while eating a ham and egg sandwich alone by my form room, really came back to me and hit me. And I know that even though I am alone, and my 15-year-old self would hate that, I think she would also be so proud of the fact that I'm in a completely new city by myself, going out to do all these crazy things, and she would think it was incredibly brave. But at the same time, I do just want to cry about it. I don't even know what I'm rambling on about anymore.
Was I selfish? Did I not let you speak your mind? To make you endless when you could have taken the time.
This is the first time it's actually rained in Rome. It's basically the first time it's rained the whole trip. It's on my birthday. It's kind of fun. Not really, books.
If you're new here, I've been in Rome for about 10 days before my birthday, and I've worked out all my favourite places. I knew I had to go to Gino Bar for my morning coffee and brioche, and then to Villa Borghese, which is the giant park on the northeastern side of Rome. Because it had been raining, it was even quieter than usual, and it was wonderful. I have nothing but love for the place. It kept raining intermittently and I had to duck in to find shelter continually, but it did mean that no one else was round. It's a beautiful place to be in solitude and be alone in, unless it's dark, in which instance it's quite scary. It actually looked beautiful when it was all lush and green. I then stopped to film some of the footage you'll have already seen in this video.
I just got so wet. I've decided that literally all it means to be a filmmaker or do anything to get a nice shot is literally just to look like a complete idiot in a public place. I just lay down in the middle of a park and got wet and dirty for like 10 minutes to get a nice shot. It was awesome. It's beautiful. I love cities and nature when it's been raining, just that like that post like rain stage.
I went and got myself another coffee from a new place because I'm not addicted to coffee, but decided it was reasonable to have a third one on my actual birthday. I picked up a birthday present for one of my friends and then went and got some tiramisu. Obviously it was my birthday, so other than my free coffees, my brioche and my tiramisu, I then decided to go get some gelato. I've been to this place quite a few times before and I know I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I then felt a little bit sick, so I decided to go back to my hostel to do some packing, as technically I was leaving for the airport tomorrow.
Honestly, compression sacks, best thing ever. Nearly all my clothes are in this.
Words cannot describe how much I hate packing. I have that. Why did I buy all the books? Why? Because they were cheap, that's why I bought. Now I fit them. And I have all that. And this.
I was trying to find somewhere nice for dinner and I got a little bit stuck, so I wandered round Trevi and tried to find something that didn't have a gigantic queue and didn't look too touristy. I ended up at this place called Pizza in Trevi, which was nice but not spectacular. I also didn't like eating out by myself for dinner, to be honest, which is why I've tried to avoid it. It was interesting to experience being alone by myself in the city on such a special day, but I think I would have liked someone to spend it with. We'll see what happens on my 22nd.